He was a Korean man who served in the Japanese military during the Imperial Japanese occupation. Captured by Soviet forces during the Battle of Nomonhan, he was coerced to wear Soviet uniforms and sent to the Eastern Front in Europe. Donning Soviet attire, he fought against the German forces, but later surrendered to the Germans and joined the German Eastern Battalion. Ultimately, he was killed by American paratroopers during the Normandy campaign. This movie, My Way, is based on the life of a real historical figure. Welcome to Oriental Frames. Thank you for your watching and subscribing. In 1928, in Je-gyu, Korean peninsula under Japanese colonial rule, Hasegawa Tatsuo and his family moved here from Tokyo. Tatsuo's father hoped he would make friends in this new place. Looking out the window, Tatsuo noticed a ragged boy running by. Tatsuo's grandfather was the highest-ranking officer of the local Japanese military garrison, and the boy who had just run past was Kim Jun-shik, the son of a servant in the household. Both boys shared a love for running, yet Tatsuo looked down on the boy before him, dressed in stark contrast to himself. And so, an official race was set to begin. No! Many years later, both had grown into adults, but the rivalry between Jun-shik and Tatsuo in the world of long-distance running had persisted for years. This time, Tatsuo's grandfather held a celebratory feast in honor of his victorious grandson. However, an assassin sent a bomb disguised as a gift, which resulted in Tatsuo's grandfather's assassination. Tatsuo believed the bomb had been delivered by Jun-shik's father, holding him responsible, and thus had him imprisoned, forging a lasting grudge. Jun-shik managed to rescue his father, barely clinging to life, from prison, only to find a changed landscape outside. Korean athlete Son Ki-chung won the first Olympic marathon medal for the then colonized Korea. The year shifted to 1938, and Jun-shik made his living by pulling rickshaws, yet his dream of running persisted deep within. On the other hand, Tatsuo was determined to bring home an Olympic marathon gold for Japan. One day, Jun-shik pulled a mysterious guest in his rickshaw, none other than Son Ki-chung. He fervently encouraged Jun-shik to compete in the marathon, to bring honor to Korea. However, Tatsuo remained arrogant and dismissive. However, Tatsuo's father presents him with an acceptance letter from the Berlin Medical School. Despite this, determined Tatsuo swears to enlist in the military, seeking to avenge his late grandfather. His father, hoping for him to become a doctor like himself and not a callous war machine, is at odds with Tatsuo's stubborn resolve. Jun-shik's friend, Lee Chun-bok-dae, arrived at his house to deliver a gift for Jun-shik's sister, whom he had a crush on. At that moment, Son Ki-chung arrived, bearing good news for Jun-shik. Jun-shik had qualified for the Olympic trials. On the day of the race, Japanese and Korean spectators cheered for their respective athletes. Tensions ran high between Jun-shik and Tatsuo. The Japanese even instigated an athlete to harass Jun-shik during the race. Despite this, Jun-shik emerged victorious. However, the Japanese judges declared Tatsuo the winner, stripping Jun-shik of his victory. Frustrated, Jun-shik confronted them, and the Korean crowd's discontent sparked a massive clash. Amidst the chaotic uproar, Tatsuo hung his head in shame, for this was not the result he had desired. He had wanted an honorable victory. Due to the extensive conflict, the court ordered all the involved Koreans to be conscripted into the Japanese military. Amidst heart-wrenching cries, Jun-shik bid farewell to his sister and his own father. In 1939, a large-scale battle erupted in the Mongolian region of Nomonhan between the Japanese Guandong Army and Soviet forces. Jun-shik's unit was reassigned to the Nomonhan front. Korean soldiers had lower status and standing compared to Japanese soldiers. Suddenly, a bullet struck a Japanese soldier's head. Jun-shik, protected by his comrades, managed to capture the sniper, Shirai. However, Japanese officers punished them because Shirai had targeted only Japanese soldiers while the Korean soldiers remained unharmed. At night, Jun-shik went for his habitual night run within the camp. The next morning, the troops gathered to find out that a new commander had been sent by higher Japanese authorities due to the failure of the previous commander, and that new commander was Tatsuo. Tatsuo immediately ordered the former commander to commit ritual suicide to show loyalty to the emperor. That night, Tatsuo looked out of the window and saw a familiar figure. Sniper Shirai watched Jun-shik walk away and felt grateful, returning her belongings to herself. Her family had been killed and she had been raped by Japanese soldiers, which led her to resist the Japanese. In the camp, Tatsuo let his subordinates mercilessly torture Korean soldiers, even burning Jun-shik's running shoes. Due to covert harassment from the Japanese higher-ups, Korean soldiers often faced punishments. At night, Tatsuo selected soldiers for a suicide attack on Soviet tanks, involving all Korean soldiers. However, Jun-shik refused and ended up being locked up with Shirai. Jun-shik's good friend managed to rescue them during the night. However, as they fled, they encountered a sudden attack from Soviet armored forces. Under Soviet artillery fire, against all advice, Jun-shik insisted on returning to the Japanese camp to alert them. Along the way, they encountered a Soviet plane. In a bid to save Jun-shik, Shirai sacrificed herself along with the Soviet plane. Meanwhile, the Japanese forces were ready for action, with suicide squads at the forefront. The two sides clashed on the Nomonhan plains. The Japanese employed suicidal attacks, suffering heavy casualties. Believing they had eliminated the Soviet tanks, they were met with yet another wave of attacks. Despite his initial confidence, Tatsuo was now overwhelmed with helplessness. He compelled his soldiers to launch a desperate charge. Jun-shik tried to reason with Tatsuo, urging him to abandon this futile struggle. Tatsuo, however, pulled him along, insisting they would go down together. As an explosion erupted, both were thrown by the blast, and finally, the world fell quiet. They and many soldiers were captured. Roaring trains carried cars full of prisoners, embarking on a journey from the Mongolian plains to Siberian prisoner of war camps. Frozen soldiers who died along the way were thrown out of the train. Once mighty Japanese soldiers were now like dogs with no home, while Tatsuo refused to accept defeat. Within the harsh conditions of the POW camp and the cruelty of Soviet administrators, frozen soldiers were used as firewood, creating an apocalyptic scene. Jun-shik finally reunited with his once fearless best friend in the POW camp, and Je-gyu cunningly became one of the administrators in the camp. In this camp, there was no faith, only the will to survive. Due to a radical shift in the status of Korean prisoners orchestrated by Je-gyu, he took Jun-shik to warming up and drinking near the incinerators where bodies were burned. This is illustration of the mercilessness of war. Je-gyu appreciated his current status and also held thoughts of Eun-soo, Jun-shik's sister, whom he had a secret affection for. This marked one of the rare peaceful moments in the film. Tatsuo had been hoisted outside for defying Soviet command. He still believed that the emperor would come to his rescue. This further exacerbated the conflict between him and Jun-shik. A Soviet officer handed them a knife, commanding them to kill each other. In this place, both Koreans and Japanese were regarded as slaves by the Soviets. Jun-shik had the chance to kill Tatsuo but refrained from doing so. They were also hoisted outside for a night. One night, Soviet officers came to inspect the frostbite conditions of the prisoners of war. Those with severe frostbite were to be used as firewood. Meanwhile, Jun-shik's friend, Chun-bok, sneaked into the Soviet kitchen to steal food due to hunger. However, Chun-bok caught him. Initially, Chun-bok intended to let him go, but when Soviet soldiers suddenly appeared, fearing for his own life, he handed over Chun-bok. In front of everyone, Chun-bok was hanged. Before dying, he hoped that Jun-shik would live on. A Soviet officer informed Tatsuo that Japan had long abandoned them. Due to the outbreak of the Pacific War, the Japanese government couldn't spare them a thought. However, Tatsuo firmly believed that the emperor would not forsake them. Back at the camp, Tatsuo saw his father carved wooden puppets. Walking to the window, he saw Jun-shik still running, and his perspective slowly began to change. Chun-bok escalated his torture of Tatsuo and his Japanese soldiers. Tatsuo's deputy was beaten to death, and Tatsuo fought desperately with Chun-bok, joined by Jun-shik. A large-scale conflict erupted between Korean and Japanese forces. Soviet officers decided to execute Tatsuo and Jun-shik for causing unrest. At a critical moment, several military vehicles arrived, bearing news of Germany's attack on the Soviet Union. Moscow demanded that all prisoners immediately join the Soviet army, saving both of them from punishment. In 1941, they found themselves in familiar life-or-death situations again. The Soviet anthem playing in the background sounded more like a death knell. They were sent to the battlefield as cannon fodder. Jun-shik was injured in an explosion while trying to save Tatsuo, damaging his hearing. Chun-bok was also hit but managed to save Jun-shik once again before dying. Watching a Soviet officer shoot Soviet POWs retreating behind them, Tatsuo was reminded of his past self and the cruelty he had once displayed. He He now also had remorse, but it was too late. As the war smoke cleared, only Tatsuo and Jun-shik were left alive. Thus, Jun-shik had a bold idea to go to the German side, as Germany and Japan were allies of the Axis powers. Overcoming challenges, they finally reached the German-controlled area, but Tatsuo's concealed gunshot wound flared up, and he finally collapsed. In order to find medicine for Tatsuo, Jun-shik encountered a group of German soldiers, but despite seeking help from them, they couldn't understand what he was saying. In 1944, Normandy, France. Tatsuo, once saved by the German soldiers, was now with two fellow soldiers discussing how to escape from there. They were all soldiers of the German Eastern Battalion. Arriving at the Normandy beach, looking out at the sea, he suddenly spotted Jun-shik, whom they hadn't seen in a long time. Both of them were overjoyed. However, Jun-shik's hearing had been damaged due to his earlier efforts to save Tatsuo. The good times didn't last long. Suddenly, the Allies prepared to launch an attack on Normandy. Tatsuo, who was already tired of the war, asked his comrades if they knew a way to escape. He wanted to bring Jun-shik out of the war. But just as they were about to escape, the Normandy landing began. Fighter planes, warships, and landing crafts appeared on the sea and in the sky. During their escape, they were discovered by American paratroopers. Jun-shik was shot, and before he died, he handed his dog tag to Tatsuo, telling him that revealing their Korean identity might help him survive. Several years later, on the Olympic marathon track, Tatsuo ran wearing a shirt with Jun-shik's name. He recalled the scene of their first race, running with the memories. In that moment, he also achieved self-redemption. This film is based on a true historical story, and the real-life protagonist was a Korean man named Yang Kyung-jong, originally from Je-gyu, Korea. He was conscripted into the Japanese army, and during the 1939 Battle of Nomonhan, he became a Soviet prisoner and was later incorporated into the Soviet Red Army. In the summer of 1943, he was captured by the German forces during a battle in Ukraine and was enlisted in the German Eastern Battalion. On June 6, 1944, during the Allied Normandy landings, he was captured by the U.S. forces on Utah Beach. No voiceover can replicate the charm of the original film. A great movie deserves to be experienced in its full plot. Thank you for your watching and subscribing.